Jaya Jaya Shri Caitanya Jaya Nityananda Jaya Dvaita Chandra Jaya Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Jaya Jaya Shri Caitanya Jaya Nityananda Jaya Dvaita Chandra Jaya Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. So please repeat after me this translation. Govinda cared for the body of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, whereas Kashishvara went in front of the Lord when he went to see Jagannath in the temple. Text 142. When Chaitanya Mahaprabhu went to the temple of Jagannath, Kashishvara, being very strong, cleared the crowds aside with his hands, so that Chaitanya Mahaprabhu could pass untouched. So I'll speak a few points on these two verses, 141 and 142, and then we'll move on from there. So basically, this chapter is titled, chapter 10, The Trunk, Branches and Sub-Branches of the Chaitanya Tree. And right now, what's being described is the branches in Jagannath Puri. So all the list of prominent devotees at Jagannath Puri, they are being described numerically, in numerical order. So Kashishvara was the 18th and Govinda the 19th devotee on this list. And they actually, so both of them, they were disciples of Ishvara Puri. And who else was a disciple of Ishvara Puri? Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So they were his god brothers. And what happened is that they were given this service. Ishvara Puri had ordered them to serve Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu personally. So that's what they were doing. That's why they actually came to Jagannath Puri. So I'll talk a little bit about them, especially Govinda Das, and then we'll move ahead a bit. So Govinda Das, he was one of the chosen attendants of Lord Chaitanya, as well as a trusted watchman. So he used to watch Lord Chaitanya and keep him safe. And as described, they were both disciples of Ishvara Puri, and they were fully dedicated to their guru. So at the time of his departure, Ishvara Puri, he directed Kashishvara and Govinda to serve Lord Chaitanya. So first of all, Govinda, he met Lord Chaitanya at Jagannath Puri first. And he told Lord Chaitanya that this is what our spiritual master has told me to do. So initially, Lord Chaitanya refused to accept any service because they were his god brothers. But later, Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya, one of Lord Chaitanya's other important associates, he convinced him that the Guru's command should be upheld. So then, Lord Chaitanya allowed Govinda and Kashishvara to serve him. So Lord Chaitanya, after he had gone to South India and done his South India pilgrimage, after that is when Govinda met him. So one thing important to mention is that and it's mentioned later, much later in the Antya Lila. So I won't go into too much detail about it, but one of the important things, one of the prominent things that, like a really sort of important pastime that's happened between Govinda Das and Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is that when Lord Chaitanya was getting more and more towards the end of his pastimes, of his manifest pastimes, he became more and more ecstatic, and would faint, would scratch his body, it would be very painful to see him physically. And so all the time after lunch, so Govinda Das was needed to keep Lord Chaitanya as a watchman, keep him safe, and also to look after him. So Lord Chaitanya, after lunch, he would lie down to rest, and Govinda would come to massage his legs, and then Govinda would then honor the remnants of food left by Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So one time, when Lord Chaitanya lay down, he actually lay down across the doorway, and Govinda wasn't able to go in to massage him as usual. So Govinda asked Lord Chaitanya, he requested him, please turn on one side, let me pass to enter the room. However, the Lord said, I don't have the strength to move my body. And Govinda asked again and again, but the Lord said, no, I cannot move my body. Then Govinda said, but I want to massage your legs. And then the Lord said, do it or don't do it, it's up to you. So what Govinda did, he actually spread the Lord's cover over his body, and then he crossed over Lord Chaitanya's body to enter the room. And he did his massage as usual. So this is a really sort of well-known pastime, an important pastime. And then after when Lord Chaitanya woke up, then he asked Govinda Das, how did you come in, and how come you are here? Why didn't you just take your lunch and go? And then Govinda Das said, he replied mentally. He said, my duty is to serve, and even if I have to commit offenses or go to hell, I will serve you, my Lord. So he thought, I wouldn't mind committing hundreds and thousands of offenses for the service of the Lord. But for myself, I greatly fear committing even a tiny little offense for my own self. So the important lesson in this pastime is, well, first of all, we shouldn't imitate it. Artificially. But the gist of it is that service is the greatest, and to do the service favorably, you do whatever else is necessary to do. And if it means doing a so-called offense and taking the offense's ramifications on one's own self, so be it. That is what a devotee's mood is supposed to be like. So we also see this same mood. Can somebody give an example of another time we see this same mood? Yes, in Krishna's headache pastime. So when Krishna had his headache, then the gopis were the only ones brave enough to say, oh yes, just take whatever you need, Narad Muni, take whatever you need, it doesn't matter, no matter we go to hell, take the dust off our feet if that's the only thing that's going to cure Krishna's headache. So they didn't care in the least what their fate would be. All they wanted was for the Lord to be happy and the Lord to be satisfied. And in this way we know that we automatically get satisfied. But the point of this pastime is that this is like the Caitanya Caritamrita is a very recent literature in that Lord Chaitanya was here only about 500 years ago. And these devotees and their pastimes, we can actually really therefore feel in a more real way and understand in a more real way. And like I said one time before, like these places, their houses are still standing when we go and do pilgrimage. So this is, and with the relationships in the Caitanya Caritamrita, we are being given the examples of how we need to be performing devotional service, what mood we should have, and how we need to be interacting. So so it is said that these are some of the finer points of etiquette in devotional service, which means how to behave in devotional service. And only one who has received the mercy of Lord Chaitanya can understand these principles. And the reason the Lord did this pastime in this way, made this pastime unfold in this way, is the same reason that Krishna gets things to happen in this way, which is to give credit to his devotee. The Lord wanted to reveal the qualities, the exalted qualities of his devotees, and that's why he made this incident happen in this way. So, yes, it's an important pastime which we should be aware of, and have that mentality when we are serving, that when we're serving, if there's something that is, there's something that might cause an offense to myself, but that the service is important, that it goes on, very important, then the mentality should be, it's okay, I'll take the reaction, I just want the service to happen. But it shouldn't be done artificially, it should be done in a genuine manner. So, the other points I want to say about these two verses is that they were both god brothers of Lord Chaitanya, and when we think about our god brothers and our god sisters, then we think of them as equals generally. And we have a sort of mood of friendship or brotherly or sisterly affection towards them. So that's why Lord Chaitanya actually didn't want to accept service from his god siblings, his god brothers. But later, when he was convinced to do so, he did, to serve, to honor the order of the spiritual master. So the point here is that first of all, like Lord Chaitanya demonstrated, there needs to be humility, and one shouldn't really be eager to accept service. Instead, the opposite should be there, that one should be eager to serve. So when we come to the temple, say, we shouldn't come in the mood of just enjoying whatever's around. We should come in the mood, how can I serve? What can I do to serve? That should be the mentality. So, the three main things that Lord Chaitanya says is, the three main principles of the qualities we need to have, and the three main teachings of Lord Chaitanya are Namaruchi, Jivadoya, and Vaishnava Seva. Right? These are three very important principles. So, out of all of this, do you happen to know what the key is out of these three? Like, I guess kind of like what the most important is in one way? So there's Jiva Doya, Namaruchi, and Vaishnava Seva. Yes, it's Vaishnava Seva. So how Vaishnava Seva, and we see Lord Chaitanya's god brothers serving him as the topmost Vaishnava. So how he is, so basically, how this is explained is that when we serve the devotees, what happens is we actually get the mercy. we get the mercy of Lord Chaitanya. And because we get this mercy, it actually allows us to get Namaruchi. Namaruchi means taste for the holy name. So if we don't serve the devotees, we don't really get the taste for the holy name. And then, once we have gotten that mercy, Jiva Doya is giving the mercy to others. And how we give, Jiva Doya means have mercy for all the living souls, for all the living entities. So how we do that is by giving them Lord Chaitanya, giving them the holy name, giving them prasadam, engaging them in devotional service, by hook or crook. So that's how we do Jiva Doya. But we can't really give something we don't have, right? So how do we give this mercy is, we give this mercy by getting it in the first place. Here, Sanatan, here, kindness to all living beings, taste for the holy name, and service to Vaishnavas. Apart from these, there is no other religion. So Lord Chaitanya, he really emphasized these three principles. And these three principles are what we should be living our lives by. So automatically, so it's like a cycle. By serving the devotees, one gets a taste for the holy name, one gets the mercy of Lord Chaitanya, and then by getting this, we can then do Jiva Doya, which is engage other living entities. So when one has a taste for the holy name, so how do we know when one has this taste? When one has a taste, then these symptoms develop, and these symptoms are compassion for the jivas. So there is compassion, there is empathy for the living entities that are suffering, and one becomes free from offenses to the devotees. They don't feel envious, they don't feel hatred, they don't feel they have to compete with another service. And when this happens, then that means that there is a genuine spirit of service to the Vaishnavas. So one point to consider is that we are guided as to how to interact with other devotees by the level of devotion at which they are. And to the Kanishta Adhikaris, we are told to be merciful and engage them in service. To the Madhyama Adhikaris, we are told to try to become friends with them. And to the Uttama Adhikaris, we are told to serve them like a menial servant. So this is the way we need to be behaving with devotees. But when we are doing Jiva Doya, when we are actually trying to be merciful and engage other souls in the Lord's service, this consideration of how to interact with the Kanishta, Madhyam and Uttama Adhikaris kind of doesn't apply. How so? So, for example, when Srila Prabhupada went to the West, he wasn't considering who is on a higher platform and who is on a lower platform. He was serving everybody. He was actually, chopping up the vegetables, cooking the lunch, physically serving them lunch while they sat on the floor eating. And not just that, he would also wash up afterwards. And he didn't just do it once, he did it many times. And not just this service, he did many, many other services. So from Prabhupada's example, we can see that when there is true compassion, then service to all living entities, no matter what platform they are at, is what attracts the living entity, the jiva, that person, to ultimately become a devotee then. And this is what the aim of Lord Chaitanya is, to try to engage everybody in this Sankirtana movement, to try to make everybody a devotee. Why? So that they can come back to Goloka Vrindavan and be eternally happy. So there is no other agenda there. And as devotees, this is what our agenda should be as well. The other example I'll give of selfless service is Jayananda Prabhu, whose disappearance date was recently. So he was the most educated out of the group of disciples at that point in time. And he was like the temple president, but at the same time he would be driving his taxi all day long to get money to then uphold the temple and all the preaching activities at the temple. So he was serving not just Srila Prabhupada in this way, but he was also serving everybody, all the devotees who were at the temple and all the people, the newcomers who were coming by his contribution. And he was so humble that he would also be taking out the rubbish bins and putting it on the curb. And so for a devotee to serve other devotees is not just an artificial thing that is a newfound thing, it's not a new thing. It is one of the most important principles of Lord Chaitanya's pastimes. Okay, so these were, moving on to text 142. So when Lord Chaitanya went to the temple of Jagannath Puri, Kashishvara, being very strong, he cleared the crowds with his hands. So the point to mention here is that Kashishvara, so engagement according to one's psychophysical nature. So Lord Chaitanya's spiritual master Ishvara Puri, he was very expert, as spiritual masters are meant to be. So spiritual masters, a pure devotee is very expert. That's one of the qualities of a devotee, one of the 64 qualities. So when a devotee does service, and it is according to their natural bodily stature, their natural skills and talents, then it is a very joyous, automatic, natural thing, like a river flows to the sea. It's not artificial. So Srila Prabhupada's mood was that one should be engaged according to their nature, their psychological nature, their physical nature. And in this way, it becomes very natural and sustainable that this devotee can remain engaged in this service for a long time and become perfect in this service. But at the same time, Prabhupada also had the mood that in an emergency, any devotee should jump in and be able to do whatever is needed, do the needful. That was also necessary. So this is another way a devotee is meant to be expert. Now, here we see Kashishvara was very strong. So he was engaged entirely according to his psychophysical nature. So this is important for us to relate to our everyday lives, that I need to be doing a service that I, not necessarily that you like doing, but something that that is easy to do for you because you're strong enough or you are well enough, like that. So choose a service that is something that you could do for a long time, and that you could, by doing this service, become more and more perfect in your spiritual life. Okay. Text 143. Ramai and Nandai, the 20th and 21st among the important devotees in Jagannath Puri, always assisted Govinda 24 hours a day in rendering service to the Lord. So these are two other devotees, two other prominent devotees at Jagannath Puri that have been mentioned, Ramai and Nandai. And they were number 20 and 21 among the important devotees in Jagannath Puri. So they both always assisted Govinda 24 hours a day in doing personal service to the Lord. So here we see that, as I mentioned before, Govinda's service was serving Lord Chaitanya's physical body, doing personal service to Lord Chaitanya. And in this service to Lord Chaitanya, he was being assisted by Ramai and Nandai. So here we see the important principle of being a servant of the servant, rather than trying to be the most prominent servant. So we see this in all the scriptures. And in Krishna's pastimes, we have the gopis, and then we have the manjaris, who are the young gopis. So the manjaris, they don't try to become prominent gopis. What they do instead is they serve the gopis. So, and in this way, they actually get more happiness than even the gopis do, it is described. So there is a lot of pleasure, devotional pleasure, spiritual bliss to be experienced by being the servant of the servant, rather than trying to be the most prominent servant at that point in time. Of course, if it so happens that you are, or one is, in the position of being the prominent servant, then there should be the mood of humility, and there should be the mood of accepting service from others and engaging others in service, which is what needs to be done with Kanishta Adhikaris, so that everybody can get the mercy. So that's the important point from this translation. And that Ramai and Nandai, they assisted 24 hours a day. They assisted Govinda all through the day. So text 144. Every day Ramai filled 22 big water pots, whereas Nandai personally assisted Govinda. So this was their service. In the Gaura Ganodesha Dipika 139, it is stated that two servants who formerly supplied milk and water to Lord Krishna became Ramai and Nandai in the pastimes of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So these associates of Lord Chaitanya, they were of course present in Krishna Lila as well. And in Krishna Lila, it is explained that Ramai and Nandai, they were two servants who used to supply milk and water to Krishna, and that they became Ramai and Nandai in Lord Chaitanya's pastimes, and that there were 22 big water pots that Ramai used to fill every day, and Nandai was personally assisting Govinda in his service to Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Okay, so just a couple more things. Okay, that text 141 and 142 talked about Kashishwara and Sri Govinda, Brahmachari Kashishwara and Sri Govinda, and in Vrindavan Lila there were Bringara and Bhangura. These were their names, Bringara and Bhangura. They were servants of Krishna in Vrindavan. Okay, so I'll stop here. If anyone would like to say something, if there is any questions or comments, or yes, Sambarish?
I heard that when you chant japa, you chant the Maha Mantra, when you Hare Krishna, you're asking Radharani for service to Krishna. We're asking for service, devotional service. So, what I'm trying to understand is, I heard that when you chant every morning after Mangalati, 7 days a week, 20 devotees chant, they have 2-hour japa period of chanting 16 rounds usually. And chanting is meant to be a service. well, chanting is a service, but at the same time, you're asking for service. So, how can something be a service, but at the same time, you're asking for service at the same time? Because it's a bit, I don't know, I just don't fully understand this.
Okay, thank you so much for your question. So there are Shravanam Kirtanam is the first two amongst the 9 processes of devotional service, and this famous verse was spoken by Prahlad Maharaj. Prahlad Maharaj said this verse: Shravanam Kirtanam Vishnu Smaranam Archanam Dasyam Bandhanam Sakyam Atma Nivedanam. It's not in particular order, but there are 9 devotional services. It starts with hearing and chanting, and yes, so we chant every day, and having a taste for the holy name is what we spoke about today. So yes, you're right. When we chant, we are actually asking. The general prayer when we chant is, "O energy of the Lord, O my Lord, please engage me in your transcendental loving devotional service." So I'll just emphasize loving here because something comes to mind, which is even though Kamsa, he was thinking about Krishna 24 hours a day, he was doing it in an unfavorable way. So he wasn't actually counted as a devotee. I'm just reading Krishna book with my children, and so in chapter 2 of Krishna book it said, even though Kamsa was engaged in thinking about Krishna 24 hours a day, meditating on Krishna, he wasn't, because it wasn't favorable, it wasn't devotional. And so he's not really counted as a devotee. So yes, so we need to be having this prayer when we are chanting that, "Dear Lord, please engage me in a transcendental loving devotional service." Absolutely, we should be having that prayer. And so when service comes, when we do get service, we need to think, okay, can I do this? Do I have enough time to do this? Okay, yes, let's do this. But the priority should be japa. Why so? Because that is the only way in Kali Yuga. Hare Nama, Eva Kevalam. So chanting shouldn't be replaced by other service at all. And doing our prescribed number of rounds a day is the basic minimum that Srila Prabhupada actually asked us to do. Because remember, it used to be 108 and then 64 and then 32, and so now it's only 16. So so when we do get asked to do a service or are considering taking up another service, we need to first of all put the holy name, put the 2 hours aside to do our 16 rounds first, and once we know that okay, the 16 rounds will be covered, that's when we can take on other things. Because it's like insulation. Prabhupada has said many times, and Lord Chaitanya has said that anyone who follows the 4 principles and chants the prescribed number of rounds a day, Maya cannot touch them. So when we are not able to chant our rounds because we are doing other service, then we are actually breaking our promises, breaking our vows that we took at initiation, and also we are exposing ourselves to Maya. We are kind of weak in that way, in that our spiritual battery isn't fully charged. So also by chanting, and when we are doing, as our chanting becomes purer and purer, there will be softening of the heart. That's one of the symptoms. The heart should actually become soft rather than hard, and that's a sign that you are doing it right. That is, more empathy and more compassion should be developing. Whereas if somebody is just doing austerity, but it's not really getting in, the sign that will happen is they will become more hard-hearted. They will become more cruel. So austerity makes a person cruel or hard-hearted if it is not done right, and if it is not done with the aim of pleasing the Lord, but just done for the sake of it. So, examples like sleeping on the hard floor for months on end, or just not eating like fried foods for maybe like a whole month or 2 months or something. But if doing those austerities is actually making one cruel, then it's not serving its purpose. The purpose is I'm doing this austerity to serve the Lord, to please the Lord. That's how it's meant to be done. So going back to your question, so you were saying that how do I understand that chanting is a service in itself, but at the same time it is asking for more service. So that's Lord Chaitanya's philosophy, and it shines through on many levels. So it's achinta bheda bheda tattva, simultaneously one but different at the same time. That yes, hearing and chanting they are the most important devotional service for Kali Yuga. They are there at the beginning of one's spiritual life, in the middle, and at the end of one's spiritual life, and it should never be neglected. It shouldn't be. It should be the priority. In fact, these three things: Jivadoya, Namaruchi, and Vaishnava Seva. So what's stated is that a person, how does one become a great or a pure devotee? And one becomes a pure devotee, number one, by making the holy name a priority. So by making the holy name, one who has dedicated their lives for chanting the holy names of the Lord, and that's their main focus. I have to do my japa today. I can't go shopping, I have to do my japa first. So priority, making it a priority. I know one person actually, and she's sitting right here. She says to me, Mandakini, she says to me, so Kishori, my priority is at this age, my japa, and then my exercise, in that order, So that's how it's meant to be. Japa comes first, and we need to prioritize. So that's one of the signs of somebody who is a great soul. Then another sign is that serving the devotees. So that's another great sign of somebody who is getting pure. So we are meant to be hearing and chanting as devotional service, and even if we are not able to do any other services, sometimes when one is sick, for example, that's all one can do, just chant. And that's enough, that's more than enough, and that's all we need. In fact, to go back to Godhead, we don't even need to take Brahmin initiation. We don't need the Gayatri mantra. All we need is the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra to go back to Godhead. So we have this great gift of this holy name, which is an open secret, which extends all the way from Goloka Vrindavan, from the highest spiritual realm to the lowest hellish planet, right to the bottom of the universe. So it extends all the way. It is, transcends space and time and everything in between. So we need to use this gift. We can't be uselessly. We hear many bhajans, dear Lord, I have uselessly frittered away my life. We hear this. So that's what they're meaning. These acharyas, these great devotees, they've realized that, oh my goodness, I've wasted time in doing this and that. I should have been using the time in chanting. So so when by chanting, because services will come when one chants purely, then one needs to consider the priority, and the remembering that the promises we have made is I will chant my 16 rounds every day, and all the 4 regulative principles. We don't really promise to do anything else as a fixed service unless it is given by the spiritual master, unless it is given by authorities. And when we take on that service, it is our responsibility to consider, can I maintain my 16 rounds, my promise? Because that's being a gentleman, as Prabhupada would say. Okay, thank you. Yes?
Hare Krishna. I just want to say, how knowledgeable you are and a good understanding of the philosophy. No, in the way you represent it. So I want to say thanks for that. I find it a very interesting topic about knowing your nature, engaging that in Krishna's service, because I believe it's actually, a devotee is meant to see the nature of the people coming and then engage them in service, and I think it's a big lack that we don't have someone that maybe is, addressing that more thoroughly, to see the nature of the devotees and bring them on. And another comment I want to make is, I thought if you couldn't follow anything like chanting your 16 rounds, then you should just be engaged in service.
Yeah.
So,
That's right.
yeah.
Thank you so much for that, and thank you so much for the encouragement. It really helps me to do my service well, to try to do my service well, and it's all the mercy of Guru Maharaj and Srila Prabhupada. Yes, there was one devotee at the Vrindavan temple. It was recently his disappearance anniversary, but I forget his name, but he was given the special benediction by Srila Prabhupada himself of just cooking, and just cooking, because that was his, he would just spend all of his time in the kitchen, and while he was cooking he would be chanting, he would be saying the holy names of the Lord, but he didn't have a prescribed number of rounds to chant. So Prabhupada gave him that dispensation, but it's only if the spiritual master says that, then you can kind of get out of it. And also on your deathbed, when you're unconscious and you can't chant. So okay, thank you very much, everybody. And I guess I'll just take the opportunity to make a tiny little announcement, is that at 11 o'clock at the Gurukul School Hall, there is a pastoral care, emotional well-being, mental health presentation to the entire community, and everybody is invited and welcome to attend that. Okay, Hare Krishna, Jai Prabhupada.